welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out.
Okay, people, move along. There's nothing to see here.
We're gonna play football. Yippee!
Welcome to The Review with your hosts, John Nelson, John Wilkerson, John Wood, and Phil Cantor.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Review. It's the Online Sports Guys College Football podcast featuring us, the Online Sports Guys. OSG J-Dub, OSG Nelson, Wilkie. We are the Online Sports Guys, and 3 out of the 4 of us have Twitter. But you could always, if you really want to talk to Wilkie,
outlawed from Twitter for some unknown reason.
Twitter ban.
Still trying to figure it out.
If you really want to talk to Wilkie, you can always reach him at OSG Sports. One of us might respond to that through the group
on
account.
my behalf. Yeah.
Email. I think I'll respond like this.
We'll all be Wilkie's proxy.
Yes.
That's right.
We got a full house this week as, guys, we are T-minus officially on the college football season because week 0 is already on the books.
What?
If it's aren't we in the T plus then? If it's not a
Well,
But nobody ever says T-plus, do they? How does that cliche thing work?
I don't know. I mean, I know that week 0 is week 1, but if you're not T minus anymore, shouldn't you be T plus?
The rocket's already gone, so we got to be something.
One. Trying to do that math.
If it's T minus, would that be technically plus T plus?
True,
Yeah.
but it sounds like a summer camp getting ready for the season. That's
John,
like
Phil, you guys are close to the Georgia Tech. You just pull in a physicist anytime now to try to have us figure this out.
brought to you by.
I think enough of the math equations here. We'll just go ahead and move
Yes,
forward and talk
please.
about college football because this is all kind of mind-numbing to me.
Stuff we
As a journalist by trade, the idea of doing math bad, very, very bad, very bad. Guys, as usual here for the past several weeks, we got a bunch of stuff to cover, a lot of ground to cover here in the first half of the show. We'll go through some of the news notes and things left unsaid over the course of the week. We'll start with what we've been talking about a lot here over the last few weeks, expansion notes. Couple things to converse about. The Pac-12 says, no, we're good. No expansion for us. We're going to stay as the Pac-12.
14. Yeah.
Is this a roll of the dice here? Are they kind of sitting back hoping, well, we're going to still have that 12-game playoff, so we'll be in the college football playoff anyway? Or do they realize that nobody's really going to want to be that anxious to join them?
Go.
Anybody?
I mean, I would say yes to all of the above.
Yeah, I would too.
I mean, to me, it's a roll of the dice, but it's a stupid roll of the dice. I mean, they're not reading the room, in my opinion.
I agree. They're not reading the room. What have they accomplished with the 12 teams they have now? Obviously, Oregon's on the rise. USC is their cash cow, the gold standard. And after that, what do you have? You've got, with the exception of Arizona and maybe Utah, you don't really have rabid fan bases that are going to be tuning in week after week. There's just too much to do out west and other interests. And
it's early in the morning if it's a noon kick.
Exactly, 9 a.m. Those are great days when I lived out west. Nothing like watching an SEC game at 9 a.m. and your roommates are confused as to why you're so into college football at 9 a.m. in the morning. But no,
actually awake.
If ever a conference needed fresh blood, that would be it.
I mean, legitimately for me, I would have chased after Boise.
Mm-hmm.
I would have chased after anybody in the Go 5 that you thought could have, or BYU.
Yep, that's what I was saying, BYU.
you chase after those, and then you get to 16, and then you're at the magic number, and you brought in the state of Utah again. You brought in an independent back into the conference fold, and you brought in one of the big guns from the Go Fives. And to me, it's just like you've completely swung and missed here. I mean, it literally, dude grooved you a batting practice speed fastball, and you just kind of sat there and went, nah.
We're good.
Well, I mean, the first club I would have gone after was TCU if you are serious about your Pac-12 network, because that would have delivered the Dallas-Fort Worth market for you.
True.
And then maybe that would be enough to get your that god-awful network that can't get anybody to watch them, maybe a little some eyeballs or some interest.
And I was thinking Baylor or Oklahoma State. I mean, you look at it, that helps your basketball numbers. So, I mean, there are lots of low-hanging fruit that they just said, nope.
Yeah.
And that what that does is it leaves also the residue off of that is the Big 12. Where do you go from here? They're already the Big 12's talking about trying to figure out how to add teams, and it makes me wonder.
The Big 12 won't exist.
This is just their way of trying to stave off the inevitable. I'm a Kansas fan. I've been paying attention to the Big 12. We're dead. The conference is dead. It's not going to expand because they're saying, oh, we haven't decided. Yeah, you have. It's not going to happen. So I think this is just delaying the inevitable. They're not going to expand. They're going to die.
Jenna Elfman in Grosse Pointe Blank. No one wants to dance with you on the dance floor because you got that big halo and all you talk about is UFOs and the cosmos. No one wants to dance with you anymore. Leave the dance. Leave the gym.
Well,
Not happening.
I think Bob Bowlesby is going to do anything he can to kind of force a merger with the American. That's really the best case scenario for the rest of the Big 12. But, what's the American stance on that? Do they need it? Probably not.
They don't need it.
And I think Kansas and Iowa State are going to be earmarked to the Big 10 because there's interest there. And you can't tell me there hasn't been meetings between the ADs of those institutions and the Big 10. There has to have been some kind of preliminary talks. And I just think it's a natural fit for both those programs.
Yeah.
Big 10 will get the men's basketball upgrade a little bit with KU's men's basketball program. And Iowa State and Iowa, the Cyhawk becomes a conference game. And, we discussed last week about depth of games within conferences and why this whole alliance is happening. That's just another feather in the Big Ten's hat to have another compelling matchup.
And I can tell you, if Kansas and Iowa State leave to go to the Big Ten, West Virginia, the clock is on before they join the ACC. It's
Same
just
from Maryland.
I want to hit on one other thing here about expansion, and then we'll leave it alone here for a little while. Hopefully, it will come up
next
again.
week.
Last week, JW, you weren't here, but one of the hot topics of conversation was the ACC, Big Ten, Pac-12 alliance. And we made this big deal and big production about how it's going to change the landscape, and it's going to be the alliance versus the evil empire known as the SEC. And then all of a sudden this week, we found out that the alliance is really just a bunch of words.
It's a handshake gentleman's agreement. It's what it is.
And until you yourself, as a conference and a school inside one of those three conferences, figures out what's best for business, and you're just kind of sitting there going, nope, had my fingers crossed. Bye.
And you got to look at the SEC. Do you honestly think that they're afraid of the alliance?
Well, the alliance doesn't stand for anything.
No. So the SEC is going to do business as usual as these three conferences fight for relevancy. It's not even, the ink's not even dry because it was written in invisible ink. This alliance is crazy stupid.
They announced they were going to try to schedule each other's game, which was the biggest takeaway out of it. And then the next day it was announced that USC and LSU were going to start a home-and-home series. What's with that?
They broke from the alliance.
Yep.
Best for business. What is best for business?
Yep.
That's what's best for business.
I mean, what conclusion can we come out of this is that the conference commissioners needs somebody to report to, because it's getting. I mean, obviously, Greg Sankey is running laps around the rest of the Big 12, the Power Five.
The
schools.
Alliance.
On your left.
The Alliance of College Football, which the Alliance of American Football really really succeeded, right?
It's all about that one, yeah.
But going back, that reminds me of something I want to drop in before about the American. Someone asked, does the Big 12 need the American? The American is in the perfect position to say, we are a relevant conference. You need us much more than we need you. And they'll hold out for the world if need be. I think the American's going to stand tall here and exist in their current iteration, because I don't think they're going to join with the Big 12. I think it's stupid. I just wanted to add that in there.
I just think the whole thing was a whole bunch of, look at us, we're going to be powerful and fight back against the SEC. And then, maybe if we feel like it kind of sort of. I don't get it.
What was that statement that Dennis Green said years ago? They were who we thought they were.
And we let them off the hook.
So that's where we're at.
A couple other news and notes here as we move on through the first half of the show. As we record this on Sunday afternoon, the state of Louisiana is getting hammered by Hurricane Ida.
Yeah.
And our thoughts are with them. Hopefully things are not quite the same as the last time they got hammered by a super powerful hurricane and storm. But ahead of the storm, one team that would be directly impacted by it, the LSU Tigers, they packed up and moved to Houston ahead of their season opener. Not a bad move, but I haven't heard anything yet about the other schools, Tulane, Louisiana, or any of the others. Have you?
Well, Tulane hosts Oklahoma on Saturday.
Yeah.
And I saw a statement from Oklahoma's AD, Joe Castiglione, about contingency plans. But that's about as far as it's gotten right now. I think they're holding fort to see what's going on. I wouldn't be shocked if that game was perhaps moved to another neutral site, depending on what kind of damage we see in the New Orleans area, or even moved to Norman, played there.
I just found something that said Tulane volleyball is moving to Tallahassee and Tulane football is moving to Birmingham.
Ah,
Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
yeah. Birmingham's while it won't be directly impacted by the storm, is probably going to get some pretty hefty rain out of this too in a couple of days.
Yeah.
As the storm kind of slowly makes its way across the state. It's a tough one there. Hate to see that as we're getting ready to start everybody's favorite time of the year, college football season.
Yeah.
Speaking of starting college football season, guys, we hit week 0 this week.
Or is it week 1?
It's the kickoff of the season.
If they say week 0, I'm going week 0.
Week 0.5.
Okay.
Not a lot of great matchups, but a couple of interesting games. The one that really kind of stood out, I think, is the Illinois-Houston game.
Scott Frost on the hot seat after week 1.
Yeah. A chaotic time to be a Nebraska Cornhusker, but at the same time, Illinois off to a nice start under everybody's favorite college football head coach, Brett Bielema.
Well,
You watch this, Bookie?
yeah, I did watch this. Illinois won it because they made some big plays. That fumble return for a touchdown right before halftime was kind of epitomized Nebraska right there, just choking the football up at the most inopportune times. And then the special teams, when Nebraska's in, it was as bad as it was last year. And so all the problems that Scott Frost had a year ago that they were determined to correct during spring and fall camp didn't happen. Now, Adrian Martinez was the best player on the field, which is great if you're a Nebraska fan. But the only problem
on the field.
What's that?
When he wasn't the worst player on the field.
He was absolutely the most talented guy out there on the field. It's just that nobody else on Nebraska's team was able to match it. So again, they're going to be relying on Martinez offensively. Defensively, I saw some good things out of Nebraska, but again, they let too many big plays happen. And so they're kind of I mean, they've got to figure some things out. Illinois, look, Brett Bielema always wins his openers. You can go with that. But they had a couple of big plays. They had a backup quarterback, Sikowski, that came in and didn't make. He was a paint by numbers quarterback. He didn't make any mistakes. But Illinois is a middle of the road at best,
yeah.
Big Ten team, and it just wasn't an artistic football game to watch. It was one, if you're a desperate guy who hasn't watched football in about 4 months, that's the game you watch.
And our thoughts go out to Brandon Peters. Hopefully he's not too injured after taking that sack. So,
Oh yeah, that was nasty looking.
I just, Wilkie, I couldn't bring myself to watch this one. I honestly couldn't, because it was Illinois and Nebraska. And I think that what we have to look at now after this effort is, honestly, how much longer is Scott Frost going to be the head coach of Nebraska? This is not working. It is not working at all. And, how far up the chain do you go to start over, knowing that you're probably going to have to blow this up? Is it Scott Frost? Is it Frost and the AD that go? What's going to happen here? And when does it happen? Because, I mean, if you look at their...
Alberts, the AD, just started the job.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Tom Osborne guy, too.
Yep.
And I mean, and if you look at the schedule, you've got Fordham, okay.
That's a win.
You've got Buffalo, which will be an interesting test. Then you've got Oklahoma, and then you're at Oklahoma, you're at Michigan State, you've got Northwestern, you've got Michigan coming to see you, you're at Minnesota, you host Purdue, you host Ohio State, you're at Wisconsin, you finish hosting Iowa. What does this look like?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't he only coach UCF for one season before Nebraska hired him?
No,
So, I mean, it was a very short amount of time, right?
Yeah, he wasn't there long. Yeah, and that was his first head coaching gig coming out of Oregon. He was an assistant coach at Oregon before he took that job.
I just think he's way out of his element. I mean, he's been treading water for 3 years now, and I think he's drowning.
Well,
saw
for me,
what happened was it last week or the week before, when word got out that they had been doing illegal practices?
Yeah, taking practices off campus and other shenanigans.
J-Dub, to answer your question, he coached at UCF for 20. He was the head coach in 2016 and in 2017.
Okay, I knew it wasn't a
2 years. Okay.
So he caught lightning in a bottle, and he was the shiny new toy, a Nebraska guy who was trusted on to reviving the program. This just kind of, I think Nebraska fans need to get away from the Tom Osborne element. I don't think his brand of football let me say it this way. It's probably still successful, but they've got to find their niche, their baseline, because that baseline was always homegrown linemen and then going to LA or New Jersey or some of these rough neighborhoods and getting some athletes. Yep. And they've gotten away from that because the college football has become much more sophisticated now in the recruiting. So they need to
realize it's not 1975 anymore.
Exactly. They need to, and they are not the go-to franchise anymore for upcoming high school athletes like they were 30 years ago.
Not even close.
So, and even though they are in the Big Ten, they need to figure out, what the recruiting and what they need to go for and what their philosophies are. I don't think Scott Frost's offensive philosophy is really viable for Nebraska. You probably need to go more of what Tom Osborne had: good I formation, backs that could explode through a hole because you had big 300-pound guys, homegrown, blasting those holes. And what you get now is a dynamic quarterback who does it all because he's the most gifted athlete on the field and doesn't trust his skill position guys.
Do you think that the success of Lincoln Riley over at Oklahoma is putting more pressure on Scott Frost in Nebraska? You think the two prodigies doing work? Do you think that Riley has any pressure on Frost here?
Well, I think if they were still in the same conference, yes. But right now they're in opposite conferences, and they're not rivals anymore. Even though they're playing in a couple of weeks and and you'll be all sorts of stories about reviving the Oklahoma-Nebraska rivalry. But it's not like it was when I was growing up, when it was appointment television, and it was for the Big Eight championship and our berth in the Orange Bowl. No, I just think Nebraska's kind of lost its way, and they're trying to figure out how to be relevant again. And it almost feels like they're grasping at straws and not sticking with, what they can do to be successful. They're just getting away from, what they need to do to be successful. So I don't know what the answer is for Nebraska right now. It just seems like they've become a 6-win franchise in the Big Ten.
4-8, 5-7, 3-5, and now 0-1 under Scott Frost since he's been there in Lincoln.
And that loss overshadowed, like you said, a great game by Martinez. 111 yards on the ground. I mean, the guy was the best.
75 on one carry, though.
Yep, that is the best athlete on the field.
Couple turnovers, though.
Well, that's Nebraska.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm still trying to grasp the whole idea of punt returners trying to shovel the ball out of the end zone into the field of play for some unknown reason.
Why are you fielding a punt at the 1 yard line
and going backwards?
Yeah.
This is not how this works.
That's coaching, gentlemen. That's
or
coaching.
Lack of.
One other game of note involving a named school is UCLA with a big win over Hawaii out in Hawaii.
Ooh.
And already talk out on the West Coast is Chip Kelly thinks he's got himself some football players and got him a good old football team.
You beat Hawaii by 34. You beat Hawaii. You, period. Beat, period. Hawaii. HAWAI', period. You beat Hawaii by 34.
I saw a tweet this morning saying Zach Charbonnet for Heisman already.
Sure.
Why? They totally outmatched Hawaii, but you knew it from the get-go when you saw them in warm-ups even. But now LSU comes, and I don't know. UCLA didn't impress me that much at all. And we'll see. I mean, they got a game under the belt, so they'll have LSU's had an extra week to prepare for them. So, and we all know LSU and what they have in store for them this year. So, I think it's going to be a good game.
Beating the Rainbow Warriors, isn't that just basically glorified practice?
Pretty much.
In the Rose Bowl, yeah.
I mean, you look at, and this is, I'm just going to put the juice boxes out here. The juice boxes for this particular game. UCLA was a minus 1,100. Hawaii was a plus 625. You tell me what was supposed to happen in this one. Duh.
What happened.
Yeah. 44-10 was supposed to happen when your favorite was a minus 1,100.
And they're going to be all bowed up, and their confidence is going to be high. And then when they get to LSU, they're going to realize when you've got some guys that can run 4.4s, and these are the 260-pound linebackers, it's going to be a cold splash of water on UCLA. And, this is where I'm always interested in, because you guys watch when other conferences play SEC schools, and they get all fired up, and when they get punched in the mouth, they're folding like chairs.
Mm-hmm.
And I can cite several examples in college football where I've seen that happen. I think that factor is very high on Saturday at the Rose Bowl when LSU comes in.
Absolutely.
And we'll see. One last thing before we wrap up here in the first half of the review. Just want to make a note here and a shout out to ESPN College Game Day for doing a nice job in the hometown of us, the OSG sports team, in Metro Atlanta for the MEAC SWAC Classic, Alcorn State and NC Central. And Game Day kicked off the season at Georgia State's football stadium here in the southeastern part of Atlanta. Nice job, guys.
And NT Central from my hometown of Durham, North Carolina. So, way to go.
Well, and obviously, I think the other part of this that is to be looked at in future years is should, and the answer is, I'm asking this almost rhetorically, is should the MEAC and the SWAC do this as a kickoff at the beginning of each season, is to have have this as a part of their DNA going forward. And I think it would be a really cool way to kick things off.
Absolutely.
Wilkie?
I'm in agreement.
Attaboy.
Nice chance to show them a little bit of love when they're really one of the only things going in town or across the country, really. And it wasn't a bad football game. Well played by both teams, and they drew a nice crowd there. Glad to see the HBCUs getting a little bit of love.
And the halftime was epic, but that kind of is par for the course.
And didn't we see one of Wilkie's former players go yesterday? Wasn't Nick Starkle? Didn't he go with San Jose State yesterday?
Yeah, he did have a huge game for San Jose State. And why can't you do that at Arkansas? I don't know. But Texas A&M fans are probably thinking the same way, too. Yeah, good win for San Jose State.
The well-traveled Nick Starkle.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and here's the backstory or the inside story to that San Jose State game. Southern Utah plays in this one. They lose by 31. And then they're going to turn around and play Arizona State in Tempe as the late game Thursday night.
Oof.
So it's going to be that's two quick ones for the
But the non-grad
Thunderbirds.
sports have been funded.
Yeah, and so literally it's like all right, so pay the man, and the Thunderbirds are going to play two with very little rest in between.
And that's, at least if nothing else, it's good, I guess, marketing for the Big Sky. Ish, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe.
You're on the
Chance to
field
be
with a
seen.
good team.
It's always good to be seen.
Yes,
Uh,
unless of course you're UConn and you give up 45 to Fresno and don't score out there.
We won't talk about that.
yeah. So does that mean Randy Edsall's not getting a bonus for that?
Here's your total offense for UConn in this game against Fresno State, and this is net yardage. 100, and I'm waiting for you to finish your water, Phil.
Put it and spit it.
Yeah, 100, or have a laugh take. 107 total yards of offense. Passing 14 of 30 for 72 yards.
How's that possible?
But Jack Zergiotis went 12 of 24 for 61, and Stephen Krajewski went 2 of 6 for 11. UConn rushing on the day, 31 carries, 35 yards, and Kevin Mensah had 31 of those 35.
That yard per pass has got to like 1.3 yards per pass. What is it, like check down Jesus in the football stadium yesterday?
Which was actually better than their rushing per play average.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, let's see, so 30 into 72 is 2 point.
God.
Let's see, 30 into 72, 60, so 12,
2.4.
More
yes. So 2.4 in your passing average and 1.1 in your rushing average in the net. So yeah, 107 total yards of offense for UConn, but they got a paycheck going to Fresno.
We're a basketball school.
Missed it by that much.
Where I understand the temperatures were near 100 degrees.
Yeah, apparently the sideline reporter for that game for CBS Sports Network had one of those on-field thermometers. It broke.
Wow.
And it wasn't because they dropped it.
No. The meter pegged and it broke the thermometer.
Wow.
Guys, John mentioned earlier about paying demand. Why don't we pay demand here and take a little bit of a break? When we come back in the second half of the show, We've got a little bit more conference preview talk. We'll hit on some of the group of 5 schools that we weren't able to get to the last couple of weeks and kind of pick out our choices for some standout teams and some teams that might need to rethink some things. That, and we will look ahead to week number 1, the other second official kickoff to the college football season. All that and more when we return with the second half of the review. You are listening to the review on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
The OSG app is up and running on your Android or iPhone. Install the OSG app and listen to our podcast from college football, soccer, and lacrosse. What are you waiting for? Download the OSG app today.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
I am the greatest.
Congratulations, you have made it to the second half of the show. Halftime is over, and we are back for the second half of the review. It's the OSG Sports College Football Podcast featuring us, the online sports guys. Got to do the social media plug here before we get too deep into conference previews. Look for us. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel, then you probably already found us at OSG Sports. Make sure to follow us, subscribe, do whatever it is that we do on the YouTubes in order to make sure you get our content on a daily basis. John's doing his episodic flashing of the phones here for those of you watching at home. You can't see that if you're listening to the podcast. But
Trust me, I did it.
That's the alarm to say, hey, we got a phone app, kids. You can download it for free. Just look up OSG Sports on Google Play and the Apple Store. We're there. OSG Sports is the handle. You'll get all of our content and more, including college football, soccer, lacrosse, and any other thing that crosses our mind in the great big wide world of sports. Oh, and I almost forgot, at OSG Sports on Twitter and on Facebook. We're there. Look us up, like us, follow us, let us know what you think about what we're talking about, any of the above. As long as it's not mean or nasty, we'll probably respond to you. If it is,
but there's nothing wrong with disagreeing. There's nothing wrong with civil discourse.
Yes.
No.
And remember, J-Dub's a big bad man, and he will come back and haunt you.
Well, I used to be bigger, but I'm still big.
And he's bad.
Yes.
Guys,
like Bill Goldberg, so there's a spear in your future.
Goldberg.
Or a jackhammer.
Yes.
Guys, we preview pretty much most of the college football conferences here in Division I. And before we get to the week 1, since week 0 has already started, couple of conferences that we have not hit. The folks over at Confusa Conference USA, the MAC Attack, the Mountain West, and the Sun Belt. And out of those conferences, I know who jumps off the page for me, and that's Louisiana. Anybody else, or are the Raging Cajuns probably the best of the bunch here that we're talking about, and a potential top 10 team? Anybody?
I think they're right there in that discussion. If you had the 12-team playoff, I think that they and Coastal would probably be the 2 teams that I would be looking at as a part of the discussion. But for me, it would be Louisiana 1, Wilkie, and Coastal probably is the number 2.
Yeah, and they're both in the preseason poll this year, which, as we mentioned last week, the Sun Belt did everything they needed to do last year to get their name out there in the forefront, and it's paid dividends heading into 2021 when you get two teams in the top 25 preseason poll. And look, Louisiana isn't going to go anywhere. Billy Napier is building a program there, and he didn't chase after the shiny new toy or the big dollars right off the bat after having a successful year. He wants to build something that he can be proud of, and when the right opportunity comes, and it's probably going to be an SEC school, then he'll feel right about moving on. If you ask me, he's openly auditioning for to replace Nick Saban at Alabama.
Interim, he could be picky.
Right. So, and he's in a spot where he's in a great conference. Let's throw that out there. He's in a spot where there are a multitude of high school athletes that he can choose from in Louisiana and in East Texas that may not be the 5 stars, but there may be some 3 stars and 2 stars. He turns into 5 stars because he's proven to be that good of a coach. And they're going to beat a Power 5 school that they're not supposed to beat. And that might happen this Saturday in Austin, Texas. Who knows?
Looking at you, Texas.
And you look at what they got coming back. I mean, the Raging Cajuns have Levi Lewis. He had a great season last year. Elijah Mitchell, great on the ground. But, I mean, I'm going back to Coastal. I honestly think Coastal, in my mind, I've got them a little bit above Louisiana. Yeah, they lost C.J. Marable, but they still got sophomore quarterback Grayson McCall. I think, there's a lot going on in South Carolina, and I think Coastal is going to, the Fun Belt put everybody on display last year. And I honestly think that Louisiana and Coastal are going to be fantastic teams this year, but Coastal is going to edge them on top as far as record's concerned.
Well, I think the entire conference is strong. When you look at that East Division with Coastal and App State perhaps battling out for that end of the division, and I wouldn't sleep on Georgia Southern and Georgia State either. I mean, they've got some really fantastic players coming back, so that East Division is going to be fun to watch throughout the year. And out west, obviously Louisiana, Butch Jones is going to try to get things going in Jonesboro, Arkansas with the Red Wolves. Yeah, sorry, J-Dub. You're having Butch Jones nightmares being a Tennessee guy. So I think that's going to be a nice little two-way race because, ASU had a mediocre year last year, but they still got players there. They just go through a coach every year, it seems like. But I think all in all, as far as depth and quality of games, the Sun Belt may be it in the group of 5.
I agree wholeheartedly. I agree 100%.
And of course, J-Dub has glossed over that September 10th game in Conway, South Carolina, where Coastal is playing his Kansas Jayhawks.
Yeah, we won't talk about that. I was hoping you wouldn't bring that up.
But you look at Coastal and what they're having to face going in with their schedule. They're starting with the Citadel on Thursday night. Then they're at home to Kansas. Then they travel to UB to take on Buffalo. And I think that's going to be an interesting game because, we mentioned with what we're seeing with Buffalo playing anybody, any place, anytime, and twice on Tuesday if they want somewhere out on I-75 someplace. Then you've got UMass at home, Monroe at home. You go to Arkansas State, and that's a quick turn because you're playing Monroe on Saturday and having to go to Jonesboro for a Thursday night game on the U. Then you get a week off before you have to travel to App State, but you get Troy at home the following week. Then you have to go to Southern. You've got Georgia State. Then you finish up with Texas State at home, South Alabama in Mobile before the Sun Belt Championship game. So it's an interesting schedule for Coastal. And I think that if they can take care of business, I think that quick turn, though, that you're looking at, Monroe at home, turn around, have to go to Jonesboro to play Arkansas State going Saturday, Thursday. I think that might be a stumble point if you keep an eye on the schedule.
Might be, but it's if they do come 2-0 in that stretch and you get an extra days of rest against App State, I mean, that is best case scenario for Coastal Carolina.
And I know how much we all love preseason polls in our group.
Absolutely.
But McCall and Lewis are already on the preseason list for Heisman candidates. So when's the last time some Fun Belt guys got some love in the Heisman race?
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of surprise teams, another team that jumps off the page to me, and it's not necessarily what they bring back to the table this year, but it's what they've done over the last few years, and that's one of Brother John's favorite teams, UAB. They change players. They rotate through players. They're opening up a new stadium, by the way.
Yes.
And all Bill Clark does is win.
Mm-hmm.
They've won the western part of Confucia 3 straight years, despite turning over players on a regular basis. And they're going to turn over a lot of offensive players again this year, but still, with their defense, they're going to be a good team and somebody to watch out for.
It's also been a good destination for transfers to go to, too, as well.
Yep.
And, you know, Bill Clark has had his chances to move on. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And he's committed to the cause. And now that the stadium is a reality and they're opening it up, you just know the sky's the limit for Blazer fans. Now, what's going to be interesting this year is Texas San Antonio is much improved, and they've got some players this year. So you got to like that battle in the Western Division between those two for the chance for the title game. Conference USA is going to be a fun conference to watch this year with Marshall and Florida Atlantic improved as well. So
Florida Atlantic under one of Brother John's favorite coaches, Willie Taggart.
Don't even just go, just stay there. But to your point about UAB, here's how the 2 out of the last 3, and really if you go back toward the back end of the schedule for UAB, November 6th they host Louisiana Tech. Then they have to turn around to go to Marshall and Huntington. Then they have to go to San Antonio the weekend before Thanksgiving, and then they have the Friday game to finish up their regular season against UTEP. So you look at Marshall November 13, Texas San Antonio November 20, both of them on the road late in the season for UAB.
And I will have to say one of the coolest hats I've gotten anywhere has got Blaze right on the front. The Blazer is a great it's a great logo. So that's when I think UAB, the first thing I think about is the Dragon.
Wilkie, you mentioned Florida Atlantic, and we were talking about transfer portal. One of the more intriguing names and players to show up in that transfer portal, N'Kosi Perry, who was going to be the guy at the University of Miami and didn't quite make it.
It's like his ninth.
Gone to FAU, and Florida Atlantic has Mike Stoops as a defensive coordinator.
Right.
Some interesting names down there in Boca Raton.
Yeah, and you know, I like the fact that N'Kosi Perry's down there because, you know, there was so much pressure on him to be the savior at quarterback for Miami. And, you know, he was Mark Richt's guy. And as soon as Mark Richt left, he was not Manny Diaz's guy, obviously. And so he found a home with Willie Taggart at Florida Atlantic. And perhaps with the pressure off of him, now he just go out and play football. And he's obviously a talented young man. This might be his shot to kind of prove to himself, you know, kind of a similarity to D'Eriq King with the University of Miami. I mean, he's a guy that went to Houston and had some big years at Houston. And then when they had the coaching change, he was not Dana Holgerson's guy, and he found a home in Miami. So I kind of see N'Kosi Perry in the same light. A new home, clean slate, with a head coach that knows offense, and Florida Atlantic is going to be formidable in that division.
And another team in that division that I think, you know, is an up and comer. There's going to be a lot of growth in there. One of my favorite people, Will Healy, the coach of Charlotte. I think, you know, there's a lot of talk up here about the 49ers, and I think that, you know, they're going to make some noise. Charlotte's a young program. So keep an eye on them, but I think good things are happening up here in the Queen City.
You know that Florida Atlantic's schedule is fairly manageable when you're looking at what they might be able to pull off this season. Yes, they've got the game in Gainesville to start their year on September 4th. Then Georgia Southern comes to Boca Raton. Fordham comes into Boca Raton. They have to go out to Colorado Springs to take on the Air Force Academy. Then they've got Florida International in the Shula Bowl. Then they go to Birmingham to take on UAB in October. You're going to Charlotte. JW mentioned that one. So you've got FAU at Charlotte, and then it's UTEP in Boca Raton, Marshall in Boca Raton. You've got to go to Old Dominion and Western Kentucky, and you finish up with Middle Tennessee. So the home dates for Willie Taggart this year seem to have lined up fairly well for them to go to one of the other bowls in the conference.
Yep.
Marshall made a coaching change for this season, and they do bring back a really good quarterback in Grant Wells.
Yes.
And a pretty good defense as well. In fact, I love that offensive line of Marshall's as well. But I think it's going to be between the Thundering Herd and Florida Atlantic in the East Division of Conference USA. And again, you've got some good top teams in that league. But after that, Charlotte's up and coming. But after that, you've really got some programs that have struggled somewhat. And but yeah, it's going to be fun to watch how that conference develops throughout the year. One
of the games from Marshall's schedule that I've got circled is on September 23rd at Appalachian State. So I think that would be a good game.
It should be. One team we haven't mentioned when talking about Group of Five powers, perennial Group of Five powers, Boise State.
Yep.
Lots of change going up there in Potato Land. Andy Avalos takes over for Brian Harsin, who moved on to Auburn. And Boise's got some teams that are nipping at their heels at this point, with Nevada coming on strong, Wyoming in their own division. Going to be interesting to see if Boise State can still be that dominant Mountain West team.
I think that if you're going to get Boise, you probably should get them early. And I think that first game against UCF might be an interesting gauge just to see where things have been with spring practice and getting them ready for the season. Then, you have UTEP coming to Boise. Game 3 for them, Oklahoma State comes to the Smurf Turf. And I think that'll be another interesting game. I think that the game has a local kickoff time of 7 o'clock on September the 18th. I think if it ends by midnight local time, I think it'll be an accomplishment, because I imagine that they're going to be slinging the ball around the yard, and they're going to be doing that all night long. So I would anticipate that folks need to take comforters, pillows. Maybe you should get a second cup of coffee or a third cup of coffee and have it ready. Maybe have your thermos there with you, because I think it's going to be a late night. It'll be an interesting game. Then you've got at Utah State, you've got Nevada coming to Albertsons. You're at BYU. You've got Air Force coming to town. Then you're at Colorado State and at Fresno. The game with Wyoming is in Boise at Albertsons. So I think that's big late in the year. And then you finish up with New Mexico coming, and then you go to Dignity Health Sports Park to take on San Diego State. So it's an interesting way to finish your season, but it looks like interesting games early on in your non-conference, and it looks like some of your games you're going to need to take care of business will be at home.
Well, the thing about Boise State is that they lost a bunch in the offseason. They're returning junior quarterback Hank Bachmeier, who only completed 1,000 yards last year. Got running back Andrew Van Buren, senior, and Khalil Shakir, senior. A lot of unprovens up in Boise, so I'm not sure Boise State will be that team to beat, with the exception of reputation alone.
Well, I think Hank Bachmeier is probably the best quarterback in the Mountain West. He's proven that, and he's in an offensive system that plays to his strength. Boise returns some really good receivers. They're Boise. They're going to put points on the board. If there's a concern with Boise, it's probably that offensive line. They had some issues last year in pass protection. That was a point of emphasis this year in fall camp. But Boise right now, offensively, has probably the best talent in the Mountain West. Nevada has got some really nice pieces as well. But Boise has kind of been there and done that, and has always been able to win in the big games in the conference. And that's why I give a little edge to the Broncos. Now, the coaching changes are always kind of delicate, especially when you got some veteran players. But it's really between Boise and Nevada, in my opinion, in that league.
But then there's the Rainbow Warriors. Oh, wait, sorry.
Yeah.
Hey, now. Yeah, Wilkie talked about Nevada. They bring back the one guy who could run with Brockmeyer quarterback, and that's Carson Strong, who threw for 27 touchdowns last year. They've got some serious offensive talent on their side of the ball. Jay Norvell has built a good program there. Three straight winning seasons. They've been making bowl appearances, and this could be the best team that they've got so far.
Yeah, I'm looking. Like I said, I think it'll be interesting, but I think that we talked about home dates and schedules. I think that especially where Boise's concerned, can Boise stop folks? And I think that if you get to Boise early in the season, like I said, I was mentioning with the UCF game, I think that that's where you will be able to see how far that defense has come along. I think it'll be an interesting day. My personal play would be to take the over in that one, but where is Boise defensively? And I think that UCF game will be a good gauge, but I think they'll get better as the season goes along.
Well, they definitely have talent and experience, and you mentioned Strong. He's an NFL prospect. But some really good offenses in the Mountain West, and Nevada's defense is, they haven't been able to make those big plays when you have to. So that's a difference maker for me. If Nevada can make some key third down stops, can make that critical pass breakup, then we're talking about a challenger to Boise State, because Boise State, again, has always had that playmaking ability on the defensive end to get those key stops. But again, that's going to be a fun game to watch when those two get together, because, really that's going to be for the conference championship.
And at media days, the Broncos garnered 23 first-place votes and 148 total points. But Nevada's got one of the best names in the Mountain West, running back Toa Taua. There is that.
One last conference we want to go run through here really quick here before we wrap up this episode, guys. The Mac Attack. ESPN's favorite midweek conference. A conference that probably
good for a Tuesday night game. That's
probably is going to be decided. Depends on how well Toledo plays. You're looking at them being possibly the best team in the conference. Jason Candle's had some success there, but they do need a quarterback this year.
And I think that when you look at teams early on, especially this year, I'm looking at can you stop the other guy? Yeah, you can score all the points in the world, but how does your defense look? Is your defense going to get there before your offense, or is your offense going to have to outscore folks until your defense gets to full song? And I think that that's the dichotomy that I look at when you're looking at teams, whether it's coaching changes or graduation or what have you. Traditionally, for me, defenses have come along first. And if you've lost a lot on defense, then you have to go to that other plan where you're trying to sit there and make sure that you can outscore the other guy. And then everything has to catch up, and you end up finally getting that balance that you're looking for. So for me, that's what I'm looking at where Toledo is concerned. How do they respond? And I think that we talked about Buffalo a little bit here early also in the show. And do all of those early non-conference games for Buffalo harden them and get them ready sooner for conference play? And I think that that's what I'm looking at, especially out of UB going up against your thoughts about Toledo.
And one of the favorite teams I've ever had to run away from their coaching staff.
Yes.
Bowling Green opens up in Knoxville against my Volunteers. So I think, and that's the first game Josh Heupel is coaching on the sidelines for the Volunteers. Be interesting to see what the Falcons can do going up against Tennessee in Knoxville. And knowing the way Tennessee usually starts this game, their seasons, I kind of might put my money on the Falcons.
Well, if we're picking here as far as on the MAC, Ball State's my team.
Yeah.
They returned 20 starters from last year's conference championship team. And a majority of those starters are taking advantage of the extra year of eligibility because of COVID. So, I think all the momentum right now is on Ball State's end. Mike New is one of the dynamic young coaches out there that will get a power job soon, probably in the Big Ten if he keeps this up. Yep. They put points on the board. They've got a decent defense. Ball State to me is a team to beat in that league.
Oh, and just so you know, J-Dub, in that game against Tennessee, when it comes to the juice boxes,
yep,
Bowling Green is a plus 1650 right now on the board. So if you've got some spare juice boxes in the back of the fridge and you like Bowling Green, you might be able to get something done there.
Yeah, I'll still take the over.
Guys, we're about to hit the big kickoff this week, starting really Thursday night with a whole slate of games.
Mm-hmm.
Or actually, well, shoot,
6.
UAB and Jacksonville State on Wednesday. Wow.
Yep.
Yep.
We got a full week of college football ahead of us, and some of the big boys actually have some pretty good matchups here. I mean, Penn State, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Indiana at Iowa, another interesting matchup. Alabama plays Miami here in Atlanta.
Don't know how interesting that's going to be, though.
No, it could be. It could be. You never know.
Miami right now for the I'll give you both of them. Alabama right now for your juice boxes is north of minus 1100. Miami is north of plus 630 to win that game.
Oof.
And we talked briefly about the Louisiana Texas game. And then there's probably the biggest name recognition game of the week. Georgia and Clemson squaring off at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte under the lights, prime time on Saturday night.
Well, first of all, you got to love the quarterback matchup, DJ versus JT. That is, that's appointment television right there with those two guys. People are wanting to see if DJU can back up what he did against Notre Dame in front of a national television crowd at Notre Dame, his one and only start. And JT Daniels, he's kind of a known commodity from his days at Southern Cal and then getting the starting job at Georgia most of the year last year. So that's worth the price of admission right off the bat. But for me, it's going to be watching the two lines battling each other, because I don't think you can find two better offensive and defensive lines in college football outside of Alabama than Georgia and Clemson. And I think that's going to be, and J-Dub, you're an old lineman, that's going to be fun to watch those guys go hat on hat, and the hand-to-hand combat that's going to be going on. That's going to be fun to watch.
There's something to be said for that first game, because you come out with those jitters. You practice your first game against people in live contact, and you're always so jazzed up and so hyped up. And the trenches, that is like a bloodbath on these first games. And if I honestly think that if JT Daniels plays the way he did last year, the way he ended the season, and Georgia's offensive line does the way it should be doing, one of the top offensive lines in the ACC, Georgia will beat Clemson, no matter how well DJ Uiagalelei plays. I had to try it. But my game, there's two games I've circled. One is Alabama-Miami. My sister's boyfriend is a big Miami fan, so we're going to be watching the U. But I'm also going to be looking at Malik Willis at Liberty, taking on my Fighting Camels from Campbell. Be interesting to see. They say he's the most pro-ready quarterback of this quarterback-friendly draft class.
Could you see that in person, though, as Campbell's play-by-play guy or PA guy?
COVID restrictions, I can't travel with the team. So I have to wait for them to come to me. But yeah, that's my game of the week.
Give you a couple from my end. Let's go with Navy and Marshall.
Okay.
At 330 right now. Marshall's a minus 161 with Navy being a plus 131. Then looking at others going down the grid, Clemson and Georgia for the sake of your juice boxes. Clemson right now early numbers a minus 169, Georgia's a plus 137. And UCLA and LSU for me, obviously keeping an eye on that one late. LSU's a minus 179. UCLA is a plus 143. And for the late games, Washington State and Utah State, just for folks, for information purposes only, Wazoo is a minus 833. Utah State in the composite, courtesy of our friends at Odds Portal, is a plus 512.
All right, a few that I'm circling for several reasons. One, Friday night, North Carolina at Virginia Tech. Justin Fuente, to me, is kind of in the same boat as Scott Frost right now.
Yeah.
Coming off the first losing season in a long time in Blacksburg. There's some angst going on in Hokie land. And if they get off to a good start and pull off the win in Lane Stadium against North Carolina, which I think is going to be outstanding this year, then, I'm not going to say Virginia Tech's back, but it's a good first step, and it'll calm some nerves there in Blacksburg about what's been going on lately. Obviously, Alabama, Miami. I'm interested to see how De'Ara King plays against Alabama's defense. Look, Alabama's got the superior talent, but Miami's got some talent too, but Alabama still wins this by 3 touchdowns. Notre Dame and Florida State. I'm not going to say anything else because his head will explode if I say anything.
The band will be amazing at halftime. That's all I'm going to say.
That's all you're going to say? Let's see, scrolling down. I like the Indiana-Iowa game because now Iowa, to me, is really the team to beat in the West out in the Big Ten. But Indiana, we all know what they did last year. They got Michael Penix Jr. coming back after his injury. Can Indiana back up what they did last year, this year? And I think it's going to be a tough chore to ask when they go to Iowa City. But I really, that's a game I'm really interested in seeing. Obviously, Louisiana and Texas. I just have a feeling about Louisiana, and but I really like the way Texas has approached that game, and Steve Sarkisian has really won over the fan base at Texas and really won over his players. So, but again, that's one of the games I circle because, as J-Dub said, first game of the year, those games make me nervous because anything can happen. Mm-hmm. And if you're a betting man, why bet on the first week of the college football season? Because it's a crapshoot. It's like rivalry games too.
Texas is an 8 right now. Your total's at 58.
Wow. And then Missouri State at Oklahoma State. I got to see how Bobby Petrino treats the alma mater. And Arkansas and Rice. I mean, I'm interested to see how Sam Pittman will start year 2 with KJ Jefferson now at quarterback. I think there's some really good parts of that Arkansas team. I just don't think their record is going to indicate how good and how improved they are, especially in that defensive end because Barry Odom stayed for another year as the defensive coordinator.
And a couple of things I want to add, John. You brought up Virginia Tech. Interested to see how Shane Beamer does on the sidelines at Columbia for the first time. So we'll see how he's going to. It's a winnable game, I think, Eastern Illinois. But I gotta reach out to Lance Leipold. Taking on South Dakota on Friday. So just as a soon-to-be alum, I'm going to kind of watch that game from a distance, hoping that South Dakota doesn't completely truck my Jayhawks.
Guys, time to wrap it up here. We have rambled far, far, far too long. Thanks for tuning in and sticking it out with us, everybody. As you can tell, we're pretty darn excited because we got college football. It's on for real, folks. And we got at least 3+ months of nonstop stuff to talk about. And after going through that rundown of games, we got a lot to talk about next week.
Be careful what
Make sure you tune in. We'll break down and talk about what teams did, why they did it, and where they go from here. All that and more when you catch the next episode of the review. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a great week. We will talk to you again in roughly a few days. I don't want to count the amount of it because I don't know when you're going to actually watch or listen to this podcast.
Rock your top.
Until we meet again, so long.